At Christmas dinner, my dad snapped, "Going out and paying a few bills doesn't make you family." Mom whispered, "You're just jealous of your sister." I smiled, then let her cover the $9,600 bill. The next morning, sirens, chaos, and cops everywhere. My phone lit up with panicked calls. This isn't just a story about a bad Christmas. It's about the moment I finally broke free from a lifetime of being told I wasn't enough, even as I quietly sacrificed everything. What would you do if the people you bled for, year after year, pushed you out into the snow and called you not family? Stay with me, because that night, everything shattered, and the aftermath? Well, that's where the real story begins. Asterisk, let me take you back to my childhood, growing up in a house in Lansing, Michigan, that always felt smaller than it looked. A two-story place with faded blue siding, a leaky roof, and a crooked swing set in the yard. It held every memory, good and bad, shaping the quiet bitterness I carried. My dad, Robert, worked hard at the auto plant, smelling of oil and steel, his calloused hands a badge of honor. My mom, Linda, toiled at a dentist's office, her tired eyes proof that exhaustion was just part of her routine. Then, 2010 hit. The plant downsized and Dad was let go. I was in college, but I remember coming home to a silence so thick you could choke on it. Dad slumped in his recliner, remote slipping, shoulders sagging in a way I'd never seen. Mom stretched her paycheck thin, but overdue notices piled up. At night, their whispered arguments seeped through the walls. That's when I first understood how unstable a home could feel. But even before that, I knew my place. I was Hannah, the reliable firstborn, the quiet achiever. Jessica, 6 years younger, was the golden child, celebrated for simply scraping by. I remember one Christmas, Jessica, fresh off AC average, squealed with delight over a brand new pink bicycle. Mom clapped, Dad knelt, adjusting training wheels, his face glowing with pride. I stood nearby, clutching my straight-A report card, invisible. Dad glanced over, a quick pat, "Keep it up, kiddo," then turned back to Jessica. That moment branded itself onto my soul. Doing well would never be enough. It wasn't just that Christmas. Jessica got the bigger room, new clothes while mine were hand-me-downs. Dad's voice boomed at her school events, even for participation ribbons. My academic awards? Polite, almost absent applause. Once, Jessica came home with a 60% on a math test. Mom kissed her forehead, said she did her best, and announced ice cream. That same week, I'd won the regional spelling bee, but the ribbon stayed folded in my backpack. No one asked, so I said nothing. Lying awake, I wondered why my best was never enough. Jessica, I realized, quickly learned her role. She commanded attention. I was scolded for being too harsh if I objected. "Jessica's sensitive," Mom would say. "You're strong enough." As the years passed, nothing changed. Her confidence soared. Mine became the quiet hum of an overachiever who knew she'd never measure up. I clung to the hope that one day my hard work, my resilience, would make them see me. But recognition never came. When Dad lost his job, the favoritism deepened. They poured their dwindling resources into Jessica, keeping her comfortable while I juggled shifts and tutoring just to cover my own college books. Their best, I knew, was always reserved for Jessica. That imbalance became a quiet, festering wound, shaping every decision, bleeding into adulthood. It's hard to explain what it feels like to grow up unseen, to know no matter how much you give, it will never be enough. That knowledge shadowed every success, every sacrifice. And it was the reason why, years later, at a Christmas dinner meant for warmth and laughter, that imbalance would finally explode in a way none of us could ever undo. In 2013, I graduated from Michigan State with a computer science degree. I thought it was my ticket to freedom, a way out of their shadow. But I walked across that stage already carrying the crushing weight of responsibility I couldn't put down. Rent in Lansing was brutal, and I was drowning in debt. My friends jetted off for internships. I worked extra shifts at a diner, scraping by just to cover interest payments. Then, 2015. My first real job in Detroit, a growing fintech company, offered me a salary that felt like a fortune. I moved into a modest apartment, bought a used Honda, and felt a flicker of pride, a sense of breathing for the first time. That's when the calls started. Friendly at first, then shifting. Late fees, roof repairs, Dad's unemployment checks gone. One evening, Mom cried quietly about their car being repossessed. Sitting on my floor, staring at my own bills, the guilt rose like smoke. So, I offered to help. It began with a single payment, then a monthly mortgage check, $800. Then utilities, $400. Car payments, $600. Soon, I was covering nearly every major expense. Add cell phones, internet, even streaming services, and it totaled almost $30,000 a year. 8 years later, that number would climb to nearly $250,000. Money for my retirement, a house, my own life. Instead, it vanished into the black hole of my parents' household, barely a thank you. Jessica, meanwhile, lived a completely different life. Culinary school, funded by them, a coffee cart that lasted 6 months, an online boutique, crypto investments, a wellness app idea. Each time, her big break, each time, failure. And through it all, my parents stood by her with unwavering support. I can't count the times I watched Dad brag about her entrepreneurial spirit, Mom smiling proudly. They spoke of her as if she were destined for greatness, while I sat quietly, the daughter whose steady paychecks kept the lights on. If I dared mention the stress of carrying both our lives, Dad would wave me off. Family helps family, he'd say. But it never felt like family was helping me. One night in 2017 still burns. I just returned from a brutal week, 12-hour days, driving to Lansing with bags of groceries and 2 cash envelopes. Jessica breezed in, a brand new leather jacket gleaming, announcing a podcast idea and needing startup money. Mom clapped, Dad reached for his wallet. No one asked about my project, no one even noticed the groceries. That was the rhythm of my 20s, long commutes, late nights, living modestly while funneling thousands into a house I no longer called home. Vacations traded for furnace repairs. A new car postponed for theirs. Every raise disappeared before I could enjoy it. My best friend, Lauren, saw it. Over cheap wine, her sharp eyes fixed on me. You do realize they are using you, right? I laughed it off. They're my parents. What am I supposed to do? Let them lose the house. She shook her head. There's a difference between helping and being an ATM with legs. Her words burrowed deep. Every time I sent money, I told myself it was temporary, but it never was. My parents grew comfortable, Jessica, entitled. I became the silent provider, cleaning up their messes. I'd look at my bank statements and feel sick. $30,000 a year, gone. Vacations skipped, a house never bought, relationships strained. I called it family duty, but the resentment grew heavier each year. By 28, I hadn't lived a single adult year without paying their bills. By 32, I'd given them more money than I'd saved for myself. Yet, Jessica remained the star, ambitious, visionary. Me? I was never called anything at all. That's when the word formed in my mind, sharp and bitter, ATM. And they didn't even see it as unusual. It was my role, carved in stone since childhood. The ache of exhaustion, the swallowed frustration, the empty savings account, it was all leading, step by step, to a breaking point I never saw coming. Lauren saw it most clearly. My closest friend since college, she'd been through endless nights at coffee shops with me. By our 30s, she was a high school teacher, and I'd visit her often, pouring out my frustrations over another unexpected bill from my parents. One night, she set her glass down, her dark eyes steady. You do realize they are taking advantage of you, right? I laughed nervously. They're my parents, Lauren. What am I supposed to do? Let the lights get shut off. She shook her head, as if she'd heard that script 1,000 times. That's exactly what I mean. You think their survival depends on you. It doesn't. You are the one holding everything together while they keep treating you like the reliable backup plan. I tried to argue, but the words caught. The truth was too hard to face. A week later, Lauren came to my apartment. She picked up a glass jar on my shelf, my emergency fund, labeled in black marker. Every month, after paying my parents' bills, I'd drop in whatever spare change I had left. She turned it in her hands, then let out a sharp, startling laugh. That's not an emergency fund, Hannah. That's your guilt jar. I frowned, confused. What do you mean? She leaned forward. You put money in there for them, don't you? You think if you have it ready, when they call, you can bail them out. That's not savings. That's you carrying their weight before they even ask. Her words stung because they were undeniably true. Every time you put $1 in here, she continued, you're reminding yourself that their needs come before yours. That is not family. That is manipulation. My face flushed with angry embarrassment. They're my parents, I repeated, softer this time. They gave me everything when I was growing up. Lauren raised an eyebrow. Did they? Did they really give you everything, or did they give Jessica everything while you figured out the rest on your own? The question hung in the air, a punch to the gut. My mind flashed to Jessica's gleaming bike, my unseen spelling bee ribbon, Dad's booming cheers for her. Lauren softened. I'm not saying you have to cut them off tomorrow. I'm saying you deserve to live your own life without being drained dry. At some point, you have to ask yourself when enough is enough. That night, I stared at the jar. Guilt. I'd always seen it as responsibility. Now, it looked like a chain, tying me to a family that would never see my sacrifices. The next morning, Mom called. Her voice sweet, almost rehearsed. Hannah, honey, the water heater has gone out again. It's freezing. I glanced at the jar, feeling Lauren's judgment. I transferred the money anyway, muttering I'd rebuild my savings later. At work that week, my manager praised my leadership, my coworkers clapped. For a moment, I felt the pride I'd chased my whole life. Then my phone buzzed. Jessica, just got a new leather jacket. You wouldn't believe the deal I found. I knew Mom or Dad had paid. My pride dissolved into bitter resentment. Lauren invited me over again. She asked how things were. When I hesitated, she knew. They asked you for money again, didn't they? I sighed, nodding. Hannah, this isn't sustainable. You're building a life for yourself. They're adults. They can figure it out. I wanted to protest, to say she didn't understand. But the words rang hollow. What had they really given me besides expectations and the constant reminder that Jessica's failures mattered more than my successes? That night, I couldn't sleep. The jar in the corner, Lauren's words echoing. Guilt jar. It wasn't just about money. It was a lifetime of being trained to believe my worth came from what I could provide. For the first time, I wondered, what would happen if I just stopped? The thought terrified me, but also sent a strange ripple of relief, like opening a window in a stifling room. Was I truly helping them, or was I letting myself be used because it was easier than facing the truth? The answer felt too heavy, so I let sleep drag me under, knowing the doubt had been planted. Nothing would ever feel the same. By December 2023, I had just led the biggest project of my career at Midwest FinTech Solutions. My team delivered a new banking platform ahead of schedule. The client's feedback was glowing. My manager shook my hand, talking about leadership potential, a promotion in the new year. For the first time, my hard work felt tangible for me. But the glow barely lasted a day before Mom called. Her voice, that familiar mix of casual and commanding. Hannah, we've been thinking it might be best if you host Christmas this year. Our house is cramped. Your apartment has such a nice layout. My apartment, barely big enough for me, but I could already imagine her picking apart every corner if I said no. Sure, of course, I'll handle it. That night, I made a list. Turkey, ham, fresh vegetables, pies, good wine. Lauren came with me to the grocery store. My total, over $400. I tried not to wince. Lauren gave me a look as I stacked bags in my trunk. You do realize none of them are going to appreciate this, right? I shrugged, trying to hide the sting. Maybe this year will be different. It's Christmas. For a few days, I let myself believe it. I cooked, planned, arranged my small space into something warm and welcoming. 3 days before Christmas, the phone rang again. Mom's voice, casual, almost dismissive. We've been thinking, Hannah, it might be better if we just do Christmas here at our place. Aunt Barbara mentioned she wants to see the house again. And you know how your father prefers being home. I sat, staring at the groceries I'd started prepping. But I've bought everything, I said quietly. I've been planning for weeks. Her answer was simple. Just bring it all here. It will be cozier. After we hung up, I sat in silence. For $100. Days of planning. Brushed aside with one sentence. I wanted to scream, but instead, I rearranged the containers in the fridge, telling myself it would be fine. I'd carry it all over. I'd make it work. That week, I skipped my company's holiday party, the very party where I could have shown my face to executives considering my promotion, to prep side dishes. Lauren called. Hearing the exhaustion in my voice, she said, Hannah, this is exactly what I warned you about. They move the line every time. I tried to laugh it off. It's Christmas, Lauren. I just want it to go smoothly. There was a long pause. Smooth for them, maybe. Not for you. Her words lingered as I scrubbed counters and packed casserole dishes. I thought about the project I'd just finished, the pride in my manager's eyes. For once, I was being recognized. Yet here I was again, pouring everything into a holiday that would earn me nothing but a shrug. Still, on Christmas Eve, I loaded my car with boxes, bags, and trays, tucking wine bottles into the trunk, carefully covering pies. I drove toward Lansing, radio playing carols, rehearsing how to keep my patience. When I pulled into their driveway, the house looked the same, tired but unevenly lit. Dad opened the door, glanced at my laden arms. You're blocking the driveway. Jessica will need to park there when she gets here. He stepped aside, not offering to help. Inside, Mom wiped her hands, her eyes sweeping over my sweater dress. Her lips tightened into a smile. Look at you, all dressed up. Some of us have been cooking since 6 this morning. I forced a polite smile, setting bags on the counter. I brought everything prepped and ready to cook. She was already turning back to her stuffing. You know how your father only likes my recipe. I stood there with my carefully prepared trays, feeling the weight of it all. The money, the effort, the time. I said nothing. I washed my hands, tied on an apron, and started arranging dishes. Despite every warning, despite the voice in my head, I still wanted to believe that if I tried hard enough, this Christmas could be different. That fragile hope carried me through the rest of the evening. I cooked, I smiled, I ignored the small comments, telling myself that maybe, just maybe, they would finally see me. The next morning, Christmas Day, I drove back to Lansing, trunk still packed. Snow dusted the highway, the sharp December air making me both nostalgic and uneasy. Every other house was alive with cheerful decorations, kids building snowmen, neighbors waving. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, my chest felt tight. I parked my mid-range sedan, an accomplishment for me, near the garage. Dad stepped out. His eyes slid over the car, then back to me. Seems awfully fancy for someone your age, he muttered. I gripped the grocery bag tighter, forced a smile. It's just reliable, Dad. Safe for my Detroit commute. He shrugged, walked inside without another word. I hauled 3 more bags to the porch, arms aching. No one offered to help. Mom appeared in the doorway as I set food down in the kitchen. She looked me up and down, her lips curving into a faint smile that didn't reach her eyes. All dressed up, she said. Some of us have been busy since dawn. No time for all that. She vaguely waved at my hair and the simple burgundy sweater dress I'd bought just for the holiday. I swallowed the sting. I thought it might be nice to look festive. She was already turning back to the stove. Just don't overseason the potatoes. You know your father only likes mine. Her words were sharp, familiar. I lined up wine bottles, unwrapping labels. Not once did she say thank you for the groceries, or the hours of prep. Dad passed through, grabbing a beer. He glanced at my neatly stacked trays. You spent a lot, didn't you? Should probably be saving instead of throwing money at food. Before I could respond, he popped the cap and walked into the living room. The weight of their dismissals pressed on me. I arranged serving spoons, set the table with the cloth I'd brought, tucked pine sprigs next to napkins. I wanted them to see the effort. Instead, Mom leaned in from the kitchen. Maybe next year stick with plain napkins. This looks a little too much. I bit my tongue. The room felt colder than the snow outside. My hands shook as I adjusted plates, not because they needed fixing, but because I needed something to do. The TV droned, a football game filling the silence between us. Dad shouted once at the screen, louder than he'd been all morning for me. Mom hummed, tasting her stuffing, never acknowledging the roasted vegetables I'd brought from Detroit. Every time I walked into the room carrying another dish, it felt like stepping into a wall of indifference. I had poured my paycheck, my energy into this. And all I got were sideways comments about my clothes, my car, my choices. When the doorbell rang, I froze. Cheerful greetings filled the hall as Aunt Barbara, Uncle George, and Natalie stepped inside. Mom's voice instantly grew warmer. Oh, you made it. Come in, come in. She fussed over their coats, her tone full of the affection I'd craved. I came out, managing a strained smile. Barbara hugged me, whispering, "You look wonderful, dear." Natalie grinned, offering to help. I led her back, grateful for the company. As she chopped celery, she whispered, "Your table looks beautiful." My chest ached with relief at the small acknowledgement. Still, the air in the house remained heavy. Every comment from my parents, another reminder that I was out of place. Too polished, too independent, too much. The more I tried to bring warmth, the more determined they were to keep me cold. By the time I checked the turkey, my patience was worn thin. I knew, deep down, no amount of effort would make them see me differently. The house was full of holiday scents, but underneath, a tension so thick it was hard to breathe. The celebration hadn't even begun, yet the weight of dismissal settled heavy on my shoulders, pressing down harder than I wanted to admit. Then the front door opened, a rush of cold air, and Jessica's laugh filled the hallway. She arrived nearly an hour late, her boots clicking as if the whole evening had been waiting on her. Dad jumped up, his face lighting up in a way I hadn't seen all day. There she is, the star of the show. Mom hurried in, arms wide, wrapping Jessica in a hug so tight it looked desperate. Jessica shrugged off her coat, tossing her shiny hair, looking every bit like someone walking onto a stage set just for her. "Sorry I'm late," she announced. "Had to stop by a friend's to talk about my new business idea." Dad beamed as if she'd just revealed a winning lottery ticket. I stood in the kitchen doorway, wiping my hands, trying to calm the burn rising in my chest. The contrast to my own arrival was stark. Jessica dropped her purse, leaned back, crossing her legs. "So, I've been working on something big. A fitness app. It's going to revolutionize home workouts." Dad leaned forward, nodding like she was unveiling a masterpiece. "Tell us more, sweetheart." Her eyes sparkled. "I have the concept all mapped out. It just needs funding, maybe $40,000 to get the prototype built and marketing launched. But once it takes off, it'll be huge." Mom clasped her hands, looking at her like a visionary. "That sounds incredible, Jess. You always have such ideas." Dad grinned, already convinced. I listened quietly, my pulse quickening. Then I asked, "What makes it different from the hundreds of apps already on the market? Do you have developers lined up? Have you researched the failure rate?" Jessica's smile faltered. She waved a hand dismissively. "I'm not worried about competition. Mine will have a unique angle. You wouldn't understand, Hannah." I took a slow breath. "I actually work in tech. I know how investors think. You need more than just an idea." Before I could finish, Mom cut in sharply. "Don't ruin Christmas, Hannah. Let your sister share her dream without all the criticism." The room went silent. I looked at Jessica, who smirked, leaning back. "You know what your problem is, Hannah? You're so boring. Always safe, always stuck in your little cubicle world." Some of us actually take risks. Her words hit harder than I expected. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up coding, the weekends sacrificed, the money I'd poured into keeping this very house afloat. I wanted to remind her of all the times her risks had ended in disaster. The food truck, the boutique, the crypto scheme that left Mom and Dad nearly broke. I couldn't stop myself. Jess, how many times have you borrowed money and never paid it back? How many projects have you started only to drop them when it got hard? Jessica's face flushed red, her eyes starting to Mom and Dad. That's different. At least I'm trying to do something big with my life. You're just jealous. Dad's voice boomed from across the room. Enough, Hannah. Don't drag down your sister. Tonight is about family. Family, the word stung like a slap. I bit the inside of my cheek, turning back to the kitchen, forcing myself to stir the potatoes, even though my hands trembled. Behind me, I could hear Jessica laughing again, already spinning her dream as if my questions had never been asked. Mom's encouraging hums, Dad's booming voice, filling the space with their unwavering faith in her. Natalie came in quietly to help set the table, her voice low. Don't let her get to you. We all know how it goes. I gave her a tight smile, grateful, but too tired to answer. As I placed silverware, I could still hear Jessica, describing her app, talking influencers and sponsorships. Each word was another reminder of the gulf between us, of how she could fail a dozen times and still be praised for dreaming, while I was dismissed for building something real. By the time I lit the candles, the atmosphere had shifted. For Mom and Dad, the holiday had truly begun the moment Jessica walked in. For me, the air was heavier than ever, filled with the sharp edge of dismissal and the familiar ache of being the outsider in my own family. The table was finally set, every dish steaming, silverware shining. I carried the last tray of roasted vegetables, my hands trembling slightly, and set it down. Everyone took their seats, Dad at the head, Jessica beside him, Mom across from her. I noticed the placement immediately. I was at the far end, wedged between Aunt Barbara and Natalie, as if my work for this evening wasn't reason enough to sit at the center. Dad cleared his throat. The room went silent. He bowed his head. Lord, we thank you for this food, for bringing us together this Christmas, and for the blessing of having Jessica home with us. His voice was strong, deliberate. I lifted my eyes, waiting for my name, for even the faintest acknowledgement of my role in making this possible. It never came. He ended the prayer quickly, and we all murmured, Amen. As dishes passed, Jessica picked up her fork with a flourish. So, I have something I need to share with everyone. She dabbed her lips, launching into her pitch. It's a fitness app unlike anything on the market. People are so focused on health now, it's the perfect time. I just need about $40,000 to get the prototype built and start the marketing push. Once it takes off, it's going to change the game. Mom clasped her hands, beaming. That sounds incredible, Jess. You always think so big. Dad nodded, chest puffed out. Our daughter, the entrepreneur. I stabbed at my mashed potatoes, my stomach churning. Finally, I spoke, keeping my voice steady. What makes this app different from the hundreds already out there? Have you done any research on competition or customer needs? Jessica's smile tightened. She waved her fork. Hannah, you always worry too much. It'll have a unique angle. I'm not going to share specifics here. People steal ideas all the time. You know, I pressed gently, investors will need more than just an idea. They'll want numbers, proof, strategy. Mom cut in sharply, her voice edged with warning. Don't ruin Christmas with all your negativity. Let your sister dream. The table went quiet again. Jessica smirked. You know what your problem is, Hannah? You live such a boring little life. Safe jobs, safe choices. You're too afraid to take risks, and that's why you'll never do anything extraordinary. Her words stung, not because I believed them, but because they echoed everything my parents had always implied. I thought of the long nights coding, the projects I'd led, the sacrifices I'd made. I thought of the bills I paid month after month to keep this very house standing. My blood pulsed hot. I set down my fork and looked directly at Jessica. Do you want to talk about risks? How many times have you borrowed money and never paid it back? How many ventures have you started and abandoned when it got too hard? The food truck, the boutique, the crypto scheme, all disasters, all funded by Mom and Dad. And when that wasn't enough, by me. Jessica flushed crimson, her eyes darting to Mom and Dad. That's different. At least I'm brave enough to try. You just hide behind your paycheck. Dad's voice thundered. Enough. Stop tearing your sister down. Tonight is about family. I took a slow breath, my voice calmer than I felt. I'm not tearing anyone down. I'm telling the truth. For 8 years, I have been paying for this house to stand. $800 a month for the mortgage, $400 for utilities, $600 for car payments, ad insurance, phones, internet, streaming, emergencies. Every year, nearly $30,000 gone. Over 8 years, that's close to $250,000. Forks froze halfway to mouths. Aunt Barbara's eyes widened. Uncle George leaned back, stunned. Natalie stared at me, hearing this for the first time. Jessica opened her mouth, but no words came. Mom's face drained of color, her hand shaking as she set down her wine glass. Dad slammed his fist against the table, rattling the plates. You think paying bills makes you family? It doesn't. Family is about loyalty, not money. Get out. The words hit harder than his fist. My own father, shouting at me to leave the home I had quietly supported all these years. I swallowed hard, feeling the room spin. Mom leaned closer, her voice sharp but quiet, meant for me alone. You're just jealous of your sister. You always have been. That was the knife twisting deeper. After all the sleepless nights, the missed vacations, the financial sacrifices, that was how she defined me. Jealous. I pushed my chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the floor. My hands were steady now, though my chest burned with the weight of every unspoken word. Fine. If that is how you feel, then let her pay the $8,600. Gasps rippled across the table. Jessica's face turned scarlet, looking to our parents desperately. Dad glared, but his fury no longer scared me. Aunt Barbara reached out, then stopped. Uncle George shook his head, his face clouded with disbelief. Natalie sat frozen, fork in hand, eyes wide. I laid my napkin gently on the table. For once, my voice was calm and clear. I am done pretending. I am done carrying the weight and being treated like I don't exist. The room stayed silent, thick with shock. The only sound was the faint whistle of wind outside and the steady beat of my heart. I picked up my purse, slung it over my shoulder, and looked once at the table where every face showed something different: rage, guilt, shock, shame. Then I turned, each step away from that table feeling like a release I had waited my whole life to take. Natalie caught up to me in the hallway, her hand brushing my arm. Her voice trembled, but carried more strength than I expected. Please don't let them make you feel small, Hannah. We all see how much you do, even if they never say it. Her eyes were wide with genuine concern, the kind I had never received from my own parents. I managed a weak smile, squeezed her hand, and whispered, "Thank you," before pulling my coat tight and stepping out into the cold night. The air hit me like ice. For a moment, I just stood on the porch, staring at the snow swirling under the street light. Behind me, I could hear muffled voices rising, but I no longer cared to decipher them. My car sat alone, a thin layer of frost coating the windshield. I slid into the driver's seat, fingers stiff as I turned the key. The engine rumbled to life, and with it came a sob that tore its way out of my chest. I drove through Lansing, tears blurring the streetlights into streaks of gold. By the time I reached the highway toward Detroit, the sobs had quieted into shaky breaths. But I couldn't face the emptiness of my apartment yet. On impulse, I turned off at an exit and followed the winding road to Riverside Park, a place I hadn't been in years. The Grand River was dark and still, trees bare against the winter sky. I parked near the overlook, shut off the engine. The silence was deafening. I buried my face in my hands and finally let go, crying so hard my whole body shook. Every word from that table echoed. Asterisk, paying bills doesn't make you family. You're just jealous. Asterisk, the weight of 8 years of sacrifice pressed down until I felt like I might collapse. A soft knock on my window startled me. It was Lauren, her face pale from the cold, but full of determination. I unlocked the door, and she slid into the passenger seat without a word, wrapping her arms around me. I don't know what happened exactly, but I know you're done, she murmured. You can't keep letting them bleed you dry. I wiped my eyes and told her everything. The prayer that never mentioned me. The pitch. The outburst. The moment Dad screamed at me to leave. Lauren listened without interrupting, her hand steady on my arm. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. Hannah, it is time. You have carried them long enough. They disowned you tonight. You have to let them live without you. Her words settled into me with a clarity I had never allowed before. I thought about my apartment, the guilt jar on the shelf. I thought about every bill, every emergency I'd solved while they praised Jessica's dreams. I opened my laptop right there in the car, the screen glowing in the dark. My fingers flew across the keys, pulling up my records. Mortgage, $800 a month. Utilities, $400. Car payments, $600. Insurance, $180. Phones, $120. Internet and cable, $150. Streaming, $45. Emergency extras, $200. I typed the totals, adding them line by line. The number stared back at me, cold and undeniable. Nearly $30,000 a year. Over 8 years, close to $250,000. My hands trembled as I read it again and again. I could have bought a house with that money, built an investment portfolio, built a future. Instead, I had built nothing but their comfort. And in return, I was told I didn't belong. Lauren leaned closer, her voice low but steady. This is your proof. This is everything you have done. It's time to stop. I closed my eyes, letting the number burn itself into my mind. For years, I had equated sacrifice with love, thinking if I gave enough, one day, they would finally see me. But love was never returned. Only expectation. When I opened my eyes again, the tears had dried. My chest still hurt, but beneath the pain was something new, resolve. For the first time, I wasn't just mourning what I had lost. I was beginning to see the shape of what I could reclaim. I shut the laptop gently. I am done, I whispered, more to myself than to Lauren. This ends now. Lauren nodded, her eyes soft with pride. Good. It is time you took back your life. We sat in silence for a while, the river stretching dark and endless before us, the cold seeping through the windows. Yet, for the first time in years, I felt something close to freedom stirring in my chest. When I finally started the car again, I no longer felt like I was running from the house I had left behind. I felt like I was driving towards something new, though I didn't yet know what it would look like. What I did know was simple. The cycle had been broken. The guilt jar would no longer define me. By the time I pulled into my apartment building's parking lot, the streets were empty, the world quiet under a blanket of snow. I carried the laptop upstairs, set it on my desk, and sat staring at the spreadsheet one more time. The numbers still glared back, but now it didn't feel like a chain. It felt like a map, showing me every step I had taken, and pointing to the place where I would finally stop. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. For the first time in years, I wasn't planning how to save them. I was planning how to save myself. I turned the laptop back on and opened every account I had been managing for years. The mortgage was first. I pulled up the auto payment settings, my name listed as the account holder, payment scheduled for the first of every month. My finger hovered for a moment over the cancel button. Then I clicked. A confirmation screen asked if I was sure. I pressed yes. The weight that left my chest was immediate. Next came the utilities. Electric, water, gas. All linked to my debit card. All quietly draining me month after month. I removed my information, typed in Dad's full name, and forwarded the login details to his email. The confirmation message told me billing responsibility had been transferred. I imagined their faces when the next statement arrived. The car loans were harder. I remembered the night I signed the first payment, telling myself it was temporary. I remembered Dad handing Jessica the keys like he had earned them himself, while I stood in the doorway with empty hands. Now I stared at the account balance, my name tied to both vehicles. With a steady breath, I called the lender, waded through the automated prompts, and finally reached a representative. I explained calmly that I would no longer be responsible and that payments must revert to Robert and Linda Miller. She confirmed my request and promised paperwork would be mailed. When I hung up, my palms were damp, but my heart felt steady. Insurance was next. Auto, home, medical. Every policy tied to my accounts. I pulled each one up, line by line, and sent official cancellation notices. I copied Mom on the emails with a short note. You are now responsible for these premiums. I will not be renewing coverage. Then came the family cell phone plan. That one made me laugh bitterly. For years, they had complained about the bill while refusing to drop Jessica's newest iPhone upgrade. I opened the provider's site, changed the password, and removed every device except mine. I sent another email. Service for your numbers will be suspended in 3 days unless you create your own plan. The internet and cable followed. The login showed streaming marathons, late-night game shows, endless data usage that I had funded without a word. I deleted my card and removed their devices. For the first time in 8 years, their Wi-Fi would not be mine to provide. Finally, I turned to the home security system. That one had been my idea after a neighbor's break-in 2 winters ago. I had spent nearly $1,000 on cameras, sensors, and smart locks, convincing myself I was keeping them safe. Now, I opened the dashboard, exported their settings, and pressed the shutdown button. The screen warned me that all devices would go offline within minutes. I clicked anyway. Through the camera feed, I saw the Christmas tree lights flicker once, then go dark. The living room plunged into shadow. The smart thermostat disconnected. The locks reset. One by one, the icons grayed out until the house I had protected for years sat in complete silence, powerless and unguarded. I stared at the screen, my breath caught in my throat. It felt like watching the end of a chapter in my life. That house was no longer my burden to manage. My parents would wake to darkness, confusion, maybe even panic. But for me, it was liberation. The clock read nearly midnight when I finally closed the laptop. My apartment was quiet, but not the suffocating quiet I had felt so many times before. This quiet felt earned. I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and watched the snow falling steadily under the street lamps. For the first time in nearly a decade, there were no payments hanging over my head. No alerts waiting on my phone, no emergencies ready to pull me back into their orbit. The accounts were closed, the ties severed. As I sipped the water, I thought about the words Dad had shouted at me. Paying bills doesn't make you family. He was right. In a way, though not the way he intended. Family is not proven through money, but it is also not destroyed by refusing to be used. I set the glass down, turned off the lamp, and let the darkness settle around me. This time, it was not frightening. It was peaceful. And as I climbed into bed, I knew the real storm would arrive in the morning. The sun was already high when I finally stirred, the faint glow of winter light spilling through the blinds. My head felt heavy, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of what I had done. I reached for my phone on the nightstand, and the screen lit up with more notifications than I had ever seen. 43 missed calls, 68 unread text messages, a dozen voicemails. My chest tightened as I scrolled, each notification another reminder that the storm had broken. The first voicemail was from Mom, her voice high and frantic. "Hannah, what is going on? The power went out. The heat shut off. Everything stopped working. You need to fix this right now." The second was from Dad, his tone cold and cutting. "Whatever game you are playing, it ends today. You have until noon to restore the accounts or I am contacting our lawyer. This is elder abuse, Hannah, and it is against the law." Jessica's voice came next, shrill and furious. "You've ruined Christmas. Do you even realize what you've done? I was supposed to have an important meeting today, and now I can't even leave the house because the car is gone. You are pathetic, Hannah. Fix this or don't bother calling yourself my sister." The next message twisted the knife further. "Mom, again," her words trembling. "Your father had chest pains this morning. He's at the hospital now. The stress of what you did pushed him over the edge. If anything happens to him, it will be on you. Please, Hannah, call me back." My stomach dropped, guilt flooding me in an instant. I sat frozen on the edge of the bed, the phone pressed to my chest. Had I really caused a heart attack? Was my father lying in a hospital bed because I finally stood up for myself? Before panic swallowed me whole, another notification buzzed. A text from Natalie. "Don't believe what they're saying. No one is at the hospital. They're at the house with police officers. Uncle Robert looks fine, just angry." I let out a shaky breath and scrolled further. Another voicemail, this time Dad again, voice booming with rage. "You think you can humiliate us? I told the officers everything. You've hacked our accounts. You're going to regret this." I opened the security app on my laptop, half afraid I had already lost access. To my surprise, the backup feed I had downloaded still connected. The screen flickered to life, showing the living room of the house I had once protected. There they were, all three of them. Dad, pacing with red cheeks, waving his arms at two uniformed police officers who looked more confused than convinced. Mom sat on the couch, wringing her hands, not a tear on her face, despite the voicemail about crying at the hospital. Jessica stood by the Christmas tree, arms crossed, scowling like a teenager who had just been grounded. The cameras had no sound, but their body language told me everything. Dad was not sick. He was angry. Mom was not broken. She was pretending. Jessica was not a victim. She was fuming at losing control. I sat back in my chair, the knot of guilt loosening as quickly as it had formed. Their lie had been exposed before it even had time to take root. Another text came through from Natalie. "The police are leaving soon. They told your parents this is a civil matter. Everyone is upset, but honestly, they looked embarrassed when the officers didn't take their side." I closed my eyes and let the words sink in. Embarrassed. That was new. For years, they had hidden behind me, behind the comfort I provided, behind the image of a perfect family. But now, the curtain had been back. The neighbors would see the police cars. Relatives would hear whispers. Their pride had cracked, and I had not even needed to raise my voice. I opened one more voicemail, curiosity pulling me despite myself. This one was from Mom again, her voice lower this time, almost pleading. "Hannah, please. The mortgage company called. They said the payment was canceled. What are we supposed to do? We don't have that kind of money. Just come over, talk this out. We can fix this as a family." Family, the word no longer stung. It rang hollow, stripped of the power it once had over me. I set the phone down, letting it buzz again with another call I didn't answer. For the first time in years, their chaos was not mine to manage. The lies, the threats, the dramatics. They could keep all of it. I turned back to the laptop. The frozen feed still showing the darkened living room. The Christmas tree lights were off, the house wrapped in shadows. It was more than a technical shutdown. It was a symbol. The control they had over me, the expectation, the guilt, had gone out just as suddenly as those lights. The storm had come exactly as I had expected, but for the first time, I was standing on the outside of it, watching rather than drowning. And as the snow fell quietly outside my window, I realized their lies could no longer bind me. They had lost the power to keep me in the dark. Dad's voice boomed through my voicemail again that afternoon, harsher than ever. He barked that he had already spoken with my cousin Gary, who was a lawyer, and that what I had done could be considered financial abuse. He swore papers were being drawn up and that I would regret humiliating him. I stared at the phone, then pulled up Gary's number myself. We hadn't spoken in years. Gary answered, his voice brisk but not unfriendly. Hannah, long time. What's going on? I explained everything. The years of payments, the dinner table explosion, Dad's threats. When I finished, there was a silence, then a laugh. Hannah, your father is bluffing. There is no law in Michigan or anywhere else that requires an adult child to financially support their parents. You were doing it voluntarily. If anything, continuing under those conditions could look like exploitation on their part, not yours. He paused. And the accounts were in your name, correct? Yes, all of them, I replied. Then you had every legal right to close them. End of story. Relief washed over me so quickly my knees went weak. Thank you, Gary, I whispered, meaning it more than I had expected. He cleared his throat. Honestly, Hannah, I'm glad you called. People have seen the way things work in your family for years. Maybe now it's time the truth comes out. Later that day, Aunt Barbara called. I could hear the tightness in her voice. The police left hours ago, but the whole neighborhood saw. People are talking. Robert made such a scene. I'm sorry, honey, but you should know you're not the one they're criticizing. It's them. I pictured the squad cars, the flashing lights, neighbors peeking from behind curtains, whispers forming before the officers had even driven away. The Millers, the proud family, undone on Christmas morning. Uncle George got on the line next. You did what you had to do, Hannah. We all know how much you've carried. Frankly, I'm surprised it took this long. The most surprising call came later that evening from Aunt Diane, Mom's older sister. Her voice cracked. I should have said something years ago. I saw how they favored Jessica, how they leaned on you, but every time I tried to bring it up, your mother shut me out. She went quiet for a moment. People deserve to know the truth, Hannah. You've been keeping that family afloat while Jessica drained them dry. Her words struck like a bolt of clarity. It wasn't just me who knew. Others had seen too. The next day, Barbara and George went over to my parents' house. Natalie later told me what happened. They sat in the living room, the air thick with embarrassment. Barbara said firmly that she had watched me bring groceries year after year, watched me sacrifice vacations, and that enough was enough. Diane backed her up, reminding them that Jessica had borrowed thousands over the years and never once repaid a cent. Jessica tried to protest, but George cut her off. Everyone knows, Jess. We've watched you spin one scheme after another, while Hannah quietly covered the basics. You've been lying to your own parents, letting them believe you were helping when it was Hannah all along. Natalie described the silence that followed. Mom's face strained of color. Dad's jaw clenched so tightly he couldn't speak. And Jessica, for once in her life, had nothing to say. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She sat there exposed, with no defense left. The image gave me a strange mix of sorrow and satisfaction. Sorrow for the years wasted, for the love I had chased like a mirage. Satisfaction because finally, the truth had been spoken out loud, not just by me, but by others who had seen and chosen to stay silent until now. By evening, more messages trickled in, this time from relatives who had heard the story. Some were sympathetic, some angry at my parents, a few simply curious. The narrative my parents had spun for years, that Jessica was the golden child and I was the distant one, had cracked wide open. I sat by my window again that night, the snow falling softly across Detroit, and thought about justice. Not the kind you find in courtrooms or contracts, but the quiet kind, the kind that comes when the truth can no longer be hidden. When the lies collapse under their own weight. Jessica's silence at that living room confrontation echoed in my mind. For all her bravado, all her big talk, she had been unmasked in front of the very people who had always believed her. And my parents, who had thrown me out of their Christmas dinner, were now sitting in the wreckage of their pride, forced to face what they had ignored for far too long. The consequences had finally begun, not by my hands, but by the truth itself. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fix anything. I only needed to let it play out. Winter turned to spring, and the distance between me and my parents became more than just emotional. It was practical, measured in bills they now had to pay and responsibilities they could no longer shift onto me. Word reached me through Natalie and Barbara about the changes at their house. Dad had taken a part-time job as a security guard at a warehouse. The man who once carried himself with pride was now standing watch at a gate. Mom had quietly added more hours at the dental office, her cheerful front hiding the exhaustion at home. Jessica, who had spoken so confidently about her fitness app, had let it dissolve like all the projects before it. Without family money to cushion her, she had taken a job at a sporting goods store, folding leggings and selling sneakers. The irony was not lost on me. While their lives adjusted downward, mine shifted upward. At the fintech company, my team's successful project earned me more recognition than I had ever expected. In March, my manager told me I was being considered for a leadership position. A promotion that would have seemed out of reach a year earlier suddenly felt possible, even deserved. I poured my energy into work, not because I needed to prove myself to my family anymore, but because I finally wanted to prove something to myself. Outside of work, I made time for healing. I found a therapist who specialized in family trauma. Every Tuesday evening, I sat in her warm office and poured out pieces of myself I had never shared before. The anger, the guilt, the endless hunger for validation. Slowly, week by week, the heaviness began to lift. In January, I joined a support group for adult children of toxic parents. Sitting in a circle of strangers, hearing stories so similar to mine, was both heartbreaking and liberating. We laughed about manipulations that once made us cry. We recognized patterns that had kept us trapped. We encouraged one another when doubt crept in. For the first time, I felt less alone. By April, I rewarded myself with something small but meaningful. I booked a weekend trip to Chicago, staying at a boutique hotel near the river. It was the same city where years earlier I had sent my parents for Mom's birthday, footing the bill while they barely thanked me. This time, I walked through Millennium Park on my own, drank coffee at a rooftop cafe, and allowed myself to savor the luxury without guilt. The freedom tasted better than anything I had known. It was during that trip that I met Michael, a friend of a friend who happened to join us for dinner. He was an architect, tall and thoughtful, with a laugh that filled the room without needing to be loud. I hesitated at first, unsure if I had the energy for anything new. But on our third date, when I finally told him the story of my family, he reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said softly, "Family is not who you are born to. Family is who treats you like you matter." Those words sank into me deeper than I expected. They reminded me of Barbara's calls, of George's steady support, of Diane's confession, of Natalie's brave honesty. The people who had stood by me after the collapse of Christmas were the ones who deserved the title of family. They checked on me without demanding. They celebrated my achievements without envy. They loved me without conditions. Months later, I still heard occasional whispers of my parents' struggles. They had sold the old house and moved into a modest rental. Dad complained often, but he kept working. Mom's health wavered with the extra hours. Jessica still spun stories about new opportunities, but no one was funding her anymore. Their world had changed, and though part of me felt a flicker of pity, I knew it was not mine to fix. Instead, I built something different. I filled my apartment with laughter from friends, with quiet evenings alone, with the steady hum of a life no longer chained to guilt. My savings account grew, my confidence grew, and with Michael by my side, I began to imagine a future that was mine. Built not on sacrifice for others, but on balance and choice. When I look back now at that Christmas night, I no longer feel only pain. I see it as the moment I was freed. The night the lies broke apart and the truth finally took shape. The night I stopped begging to belong and started choosing where I did. If you have ever faced a family who made you feel less, who took your giving for granted, who confused loyalty with control, know this: you are not alone, and you have the right to step away, to heal, to build something better. I would love to hear if my story resonates with you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with toxic family members? What helped you find your strength? Thanks for watching. Take care. Good luck.